Welcome to Hope at Night, featuring Jim Burr. Q&A with our live audience and host, Anil Kanda. Today's episode, Did the Big Bang Actually Happen? And here's your host, Anil Kanda.
Everyone knows the story of Goldilocks, right? 3 bears, a blonde girl, porridge, beds, chairs, and way too much whining. And while her taste for other people's stuff may make you scratch your head, her name has been associated with another mystery that scientists have sought to answer for decades. Earth gets called the Goldilocks planet because everything's just right for life to exist. Perfect distance from the sun to maintain livable temperatures. Perfect composition with carbon and water. Perfect atmosphere to shield us from the sun. Perfect neighboring planets to shield it from asteroids, and so on. But maybe it should also hint at the fact that Earth shouldn't be here to begin with. So what is it doing here, and how did it all begin? Was it a Big Bang or a cosmic whisper? Here to answer some of these questions is Jim Burr. Jim has been recognized for his achievements in telescope design and manufacturing. He is a savant of the sky. Please welcome to Hope at Night, Jim Burr. Could you tell us a little bit about your background, your experience with astronomy and telescope design?
Well, as a little kid, I was sitting in a camp meeting, and there was a guy by the name of Philip Knox came, and he was, this guy was on fire. He was excited, and he was showing these pictures. You know, it was even before the Hubble, the 200-inch Palomar. This is like way the Mount Wilson telescope. But that was the seed that got planted, my interest in astronomy, but I have dyslexia. And basically, I couldn't go anywhere in school. I joke about being a high school dropout, that my body graduated, but my mind dropped out a long time before. So I went into electronics and astronomy. I would buy the magazine and until there was a class. We had adult education, a county class, evening class on astronomy, and all of a sudden it came alive, and I subscribed to everything you could subscribe to. And I started building telescopes. And this would have been 1980, and got out of my other business, and I actually worked for Dish Network, and started building my telescope accessories, and then we built one telescope, an 18-inch scope, and we couldn't build them fast enough. It was bigger than anybody else had. It took better pictures. It was gorgeous. It had a lot of chrome on it, and the backlog on that was in the 90s. If you ordered one, you'd wait 10 weeks to get one. We could build one a week. I hiring people, and building machines to make this stuff. So it really took off very good. I think a gift from God. I think God gave me a mechanical gift because I have no education in engineering, and yet
You're designing telescopes.
I designed telescopes, and NASA. We were at a show. And Telescope Makers Conference in Riverside, California. Every year I would go there and we'd show our telescopes. And NASA saw this one huge scope, and they liked it and bought 2 to get data from Mars on a laser. The idea is we use radio waves at that time from RF. You can't aim radio very well. The footprints would be like 100 million miles, but laser you can aim, but it's optics, you need a telescope. So in 2002, they bought the first one to get data from Mars. Right now, at that time at least, they were getting 1 megabyte a second from Mars data, but with laser it would go to 100 megabytes a second. That's why. So they bought one in 2002, and they bought another one, and then they got their budget cut, and that was the end of it. They said they needed 16 of those, but I was happy to get 2 checks from NASA.
So with a lack of education, you were designing telescopes that NASA purchased.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to begin with the design of a telescope. What is exactly inside a telescope?
Well, it's very simple, actually. You have these are Newtonian. These are not, like this is a refractor, okay? That's not that's a finder scope, okay? I mean, we're talking big telescopes. But, so it's not a lens, it's a mirror. And Isaac Newton came up with the Newtonian telescope. So it's like ladies put on their makeup and they have these mirrors that make their face bigger. Same thing. We have a mirror in the bottom. Light comes down, hits this mirror, comes back up. The light is focused to a fine point. All the light from this mirror is focused. So you got the picture right here. Problem is, you put your face here, you see your face. You don't see the stars. So Isaac Newton came up with this idea: if we take a little mirror and shoot the light out, now I can look in the side. The mirror's here, the telescope's here. I look in the side, the light comes out, and that's a Newtonian telescope, and that's what we built, all Newtonians.
I want you to know I understand what you're saying, and I have no idea what you're talking about at the same time. Well, I'm glad God has gifted you with the brain to understand these things. Now I got to start off by asking you a very fundamental question, which I think will set the foundation for this whole discussion, and that is this. You are a Bible-believing Christian. Yes. You have faith. Is faith compatible with science?
There's a guy out of Los Angeles, his name is Dr. Picani, PhD. He's an astrophysicist, doctoral degree in physics, astrophysics. And I've been on his program, and he gave me his book. And it's really interesting. If you look at his book, the title of the book is Atoms, Einstein, and the Universe. And if you look at page 276 in his book, he says, in the very beginning of the Big Bang, how small is an atom? He says, at the very beginning, this thing that banged was like a millionth of a millionth of a millionth of a millionth the size of the smallest atom. And it was 100 million degrees. And it blew up. Scientific America says, you know, with the Big Bang, there's no explanation apart from dumb luck. And so this is supposedly how it all started. And, you know, where did the heat come from? For the million degrees, where did it come? I mean, you see, the Big Bang does not explain the beginning of the universe. It explains the evolution. So we had this big explosion, and I mean, that violates the first law of thermodynamics. I mean, you remember, wasn't it the sound of music? Nothing comes from nothing, nothing ever could. So what preceded that? They have no idea. They don't even try to explain it. We can't explain it. We can only explain after that point what happened. And we had this inflation where everything was just expanding out like faster than the speed of light, you know, explaining all these galaxies, how they could form and all this kind of stuff.
Well, let's talk about this. I understand a little bit of what you're saying here, which is this idea that there's a lot of certainty in science, but there's a lot of gaps and unanswered questions. When it comes to this idea of the Big Bang, according to mainstream scientists, what is the definition of the Big Bang? What exactly is that?
You know, the James Webb Telescope has, some say, demolished the Big Bang. I mean, we got to cut some slack for these ads. You know how these crazy claims. First of all, forget about half of what you read on the internet. But we've had these claims on the internet that you know, NASA accepts defeat. The Big Bang is over because the James Webb Telescope has destroyed it. Well, so these claims are exaggerated. So we need to give them a little. You know, they want you to read their articles and so forth. So they go overboard to get your attention, so you'll read it. But on the other side, we have astrophysicists are going like, my life is over. All my work is worthless now that the Big Bang has been destroyed by the James Webb Telescope for many reasons. So the astrophysicists have gotten very vocal. You know, now they say, well, this is all pseudoscience. The people who say the Big Bang has been destroyed, is, you know, from the James Webb scope, is pseudoscience. It's the Christians. We have good solid out of the Big Bang. The problem is the Big Bang, there's 16 predictions of the Big Bang that fall flat on their face.
So if I understand you right, when it comes to this understanding of the Big Bang and how you described it, apparently there was nothing, then instantaneously there was this bang, that's what we call the Big Bang, and this is where the universe came to be. And what you're also indicating is that based upon with the recent discoveries of the James Webb Telescope, that this is being now challenged. What is your view regarding the creation of this universe?
Well, you know, we have an all-powerful God that could call it the universe into existence. By the word of the Lord were the heavens made. And that sun, going back to that sun, the power in that sun, you know, the Hadron Collider has proven Psalm 33:6, by the word of the Lord were the heavens made. If you have enough energy, you can actually make this as matter. The Hadron Colliders actually produce protons, never existed before. It's a creation machine with $1 million of electricity. They made like 16 protons. So we can verify by the word of the Lord the power from his voice. The hydrogen, do you realize our sun, every second of the day, our sun puts out enough power to run our grid for 500,000 years. Where does that power come from? It's the power in the atom, and we are desperately trying to harness that. We have over 250 tokamaks attempts all around the world to try to create fusion energy to power our grid. The fission process is dirty and it's very inefficient. The fusion of the atoms is much better. And so the idea is we need this incredible temperature, you know, 100 million degrees. It melts everything. Everything on Earth is melted crucible. How do you hold something at 100 million or more degrees? Well, they use magnetic fields and these tokamaks that we're putting probably $50 billion in France trying to harness the sun. We're trying to, all over the world, we're trying to do this. All these countries trying to power the grid with fusion energy like happens in the sun, and then we can't do it.
So the implication of what you're saying is that this cannot, from natural means, explain, for example, how the sun got its tremendous energy.
Yeah.
Where did it all come from?
Right.
Right. So do you think that your belief in the Bible, with God creating the universe, that there is evidence in the universe to confirm this belief?
Absolutely. We just see the beauty. The heavens declare the glory of God, you know, and we see evidence of tremendous power. We have some pictures coming up here of, I was going to talk a little bit about some of just the beauties we see around us. People love pictures, and there's a picture of the Carini Nebula from the James Webb Telescope. That object right now, that's called V838. Nobody noticed the night before was the star all of a sudden was visible really bright, and some of these in the daytime. If it's a supernova, you could see it in the daytime.
Now, Jim, you had a conversation with an astrophysicist by the name of Dr. Pekarin. Could you tell us a little bit about the conversation you had with him?
Well, I was on his radio program. He's out of Los Angeles, and he's written a book, and he gave me his book. And but I asked the question, you know, where does all this, I mean, the sun's giving off 300 million tons every day of energy. Where does this come from? Where does this matter come from? There's all this energy, where does this energy come from? And he says, well, he says, this, you know, yes, we have tremendous energy in the sun, but we also have tremendous negative gravitational potential energy. So, well, all the gravity of all these stars, it would take a lot of power to pull these stars out of their gravitational field. So, yeah, we've got tremendous amount of energy, but we've also got tremendous amount of negative gravitational energy, and they cancel. Therefore, the total energy in the universe is very close to zero. Therefore, the universe could create itself. Now, Hawking says the same thing. He says, because of gravity, the universe can and will create itself. That's Stephen Hawking's, okay? Where did gravity come from? Where did the laws come from? You see, because of gravity, the universe can and will create itself. And that's what Pekani says. Well, yeah, we do have all this energy. And the sun is just one of maybe 200 billion in our Milky Way galaxy, and we have maybe 200 billion galaxies out there, and all these got all this power, and we're trying to harness that through our fusion process and all around the world. And it's just amazing because we gave Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory $20 billion to try to harness the sun, to power our grid, fusion, you know, get it hot. And they've taken 192 lasers. They're pacifying 192 lasers through 192 miles of amplification. Each laser goes through a mile of amplification. And then they focus on a little capsule. They said, well, if we build a sun the size of a head of a match, we could learn. Give us 50 years to learn how to make a sun on Earth. So they actually build a tiny little capsule, no bigger than the head of a match. They focus 192 lasers on these little capsules, and it's like 100 million degrees, and they did fusion. They actually built the sun in 2014. They built a sun that produced 7,000 joules of energy, but it only could be even on for 20 billionths of a second. They fire these lasers. We don't want to melt California off the map, so they fire these lasers, 192 lasers, into one little tiny capsule. Got 7,000 joule gain, but they can only leave it on for 20 billionths of a second. Then they wait 8 hours and fire it again. Wait 8 hours and fire it again. Okay, and world headlines. Wall Street Journal says, U.S. scores a fusion power breakthrough. Here we have a sun the size of the head of a match. And of course, the sun, everything was just right. It just happened. 100 billion stars, it just happened. Well, the Lord gave me a thought, so they got 7,000 joules, but they got it in 20 billionths of a second. You have to divide those numbers. How many watts did they get? They got 3 millionths of a watt. But the idea, and I think this came from a little tidbit, a little crumb from the Lord. How much power is in a firefly? If you look it up, a firefly, one little firefly has 3,000ths of a watt. If you had 35,000 fireflies, you could have a 100-watt light bulb, 35,000. So what they did, that little firefly has 1,000 times more energy than what Lawrence Livermore did with $20 billion trying to create a sun on Earth.
Not even close.
What a God.
Right.
What a God. Laying the glory of man in the dust.
Right. I remember when I was hiking through Ecuador, I remember coming across fireflies at night, and they look like just Christmas. First time I ever seen them. Just look like Christmas lights all of a sudden floating through the air, and then they would just phase out, and it was incredible. And this is from the handiwork of God. Speaking of the handiwork of God, when you look out into the universe, and you see the universe as it currently is, what in the universe speaks to you about God's glory?
Well, Moses said to God, show me your glory. And I would think of something spectacular, but he said, I'll make my goodness pass before you. So we see the glory of God in his goodness. But when we look on the heavens, the Bible tells us plainly the heavens declare the glory of God, and we can certainly see the beauty. We have a screen picture coming up here of Eta Carini, the Carini Nebula. Actually, this is in the southern part of our Milky Way galaxy, a gorgeous, gorgeous picture. That's actually taken with the James Webb Telescope there, and that's really not the true color. That color's been added because the James Webb is using at the infrared range, and so based on the Hubble, they've doctored this, and they, in other words, assigned color to different parts of the frequency. But the next slide we have coming up is a really interesting object. This is, we don't even know what that is. It's not a nova or supernova. In 2002, we spotted the star starting to get bright. You see the top of the screen up there. Hubble was assigned, had work assigned to it, and it could not get a picture till May of 2002. And then you see it down at the bottom in 2004. The main picture is how it has changed. And they really don't know what this is. We don't have a name for it. It's called V838. You can look that up. But it's one of my favorite, just gorgeous picture, and I think it's like a blast of light that's illuminated these clouds, but they're really not sure exactly what that is. The next slide we have coming up is the Eagle Nebula. This is the heart of the eagle. If you could see the whole thing, you see like an eagle with the wings, 50 million years across. But the heart of the eagle, and these are called the pillars of creation. And they're outgassing, off-gassing. At the very top, there's little fingers that are the size of our whole solar system, about 10 billion miles in diameter. And on the next picture, we'll see Saturn. And it's an interesting picture because the sun is right behind it. And you see the sun rays and the sun beams. And it was photographed by the Cassini spacecraft. Cassini is like a school bus. It weighs 12 tons. We don't have a big enough rocket to get it 1 billion miles away. So they shot it towards Venus. Falling towards Venus, it's using the gravity of Venus to pick up speed. Then they shoot it back to Earth, and it's falling towards Earth, and it whips around Earth, picks up more speed. Then they shoot it back to Venus again. Then it's off to Jupiter, and 500 million miles away, and it picks up gravity of Jupiter. It still takes us 7 years for Cassini to get to Saturn, and they fly it through the F and the G ring. That's a 2,500-mile window. They fly it through, fire the rockets. It's in orbit. And by doing the gravity of Venus, Earth, Venus, Jupiter, we save 75 tons of rocket fuel because we don't have a big enough rocket to get, at that time, to get 12 school bus 1 billion miles away. But in that picture, you'll see the Earth, a little tiny arrow pointing towards the Earth. There's Earth from 1 billion miles away. And when I see that, I think of what Satan said to Jesus, if you worship me, I got something for you. I'm going to give you all of that little speck on the screen. I don't think Jesus was impressed. The Bible says all power is given to me in heaven and earth.
Right. The universe is his.
Yeah, right.
Jim, do you think we'll ever be able to travel the universe and see these things
Yes and no.
in person, up close?
Now, Elon Musk is not going to do it, okay? But we're going to be changed in the moment, the twinkling of an eye at the last trump. You see, the dead in Christ shall rise first, and we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with him in the heavens, you see. So, yes, we will, but not, there's so many problems trying to get to Mars, you know. They're working on it, yeah, they're working, but it's dangerous. This Earth was really designed for us, you see. Once we get outside of the Van Allen belts created by the magnetic field, it's dangerous. That protects us from radiation from the sun and from space. We have gamma ray bursts and all kinds of stuff that's coming in. So the sun magnetic field protects us from the sun, but the sun protects us from radiation from space.
I know we're going to be talking more about what's called the Goldilocks planet. We're going to be talking about this special planet soon. Thank you so much. When we come back, Jim Burr will take us further down this black hole. They write these things for me. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Hope at Night. We are here with Jim Burr, who has spent countless nights gazing at the stars, literally. He is an expert in the field of astronomy and has been deeply involved in the discussion of how science, particularly with respect to our origins, align with the creationist perspective. Jim, we were talking a little bit about a black hole, right? Can you explain to me what exactly is a black hole?
Well, we don't know. I'm not sure. There was an article in Astronomy magazine that said people who study black holes are cosmic magicians. They need to coax a great deal of meaning out of precious little information. I'm going to show you a picture. We have this headline came down a couple of years ago. We have discovered the biggest black hole in the universe, and the artists go to work. Look at that. This is the biggest black hole in the universe. Now, I want to show you what we've actually discovered. That article goes on to show you the picture. In front of that area is that arrow is the biggest black hole in the universe.
So essentially, we don't know.
I don't know if there are black holes. It's kind of theoretical physics, you know, and didn't bring it along, but there's a picture. You know, we've discovered planets, and artists. It may have rings, and it may have water, and it could have life, and these beautiful pictures. And then I'd like to show you what we actually see. You know, we have actually, to photograph, to image planets, there's just a few dozen that we've actually seen. We discover them because they go in front of the star and it gets dim. We discover them because they cause a wobble. Like Jupiter moves our sun 500,000 miles every 10 years. So our sun's not going around the galaxy like this. Our sun is doing a sine wave as it goes around galaxy. And not only that, Saturn moves at another 400, Jupiter's 500,000 miles, Saturn's another 400,000 miles. Mercury, every 88 days, Mercury on this sine wave, you know what a sine wave is doing at this as it goes around Mercury every 88 days, Mercury's going to move at 300 miles. Venus every 254 days is going to move at 500 miles. Earth is so we got sine wave upon sine wave, and I'd love to play. I have a video clip that shows star motions where Hubble zoomed in on the Omega star cluster and made a video. And they say this is how the stars are going to move over the next 10,000 years. They watched these stars for 4 years and made a video. And they're all in motion. And what's interesting, I sat in this lecture on gravity at the University of Oklahoma, and this guy said when you have three, like Jupiter, the Sun, and Saturn, nobody can write a formula. As that sun goes around the galaxy, it can't be done. Nobody can write a formula for how the sun moves because of all this oscillation. I texted the guy when I got home, and I said, did I hear you correctly before I repeat this in public? He said, yes. For 330 years since Isaac Newton, even Albert Einstein can't write a formula. It's called the three-body problem. A formula for how the sun moves around the galaxy. Einstein can't do it. He says we can simulate it on our computers. We're getting close. The harder we work. And here's an article in Mechanics Illustrated that says this thorny three-body problem we've been trying to solve for hundreds of years. Even if we check those stars from nanosecond to nanosecond. We cannot reliably predict how the sun will move. What blows me away, you see these stars, God's got it all figured out. Einstein can't write a formula for 3. What a God.
Yes.
What a God.
Now, you grew up, as well as I did, reading the story of Goldilocks and the 3 bears,
Yeah.
right? She breaks into this home owned by bears. She finds porridge too hot, too cold. Then she finds porridge she absolutely loves. Then she's going to bed. She finds a bed too big, a bed too small, and then she finds a bed that's just right.
Yeah.
What makes our planet the Goldilocks planet?
There are at least 100 things that are finely tuned about and some reports say there's actually closer to 200 finely tuned parameters. And you could look at, Scientific America has this whole list of problems, and they say that, like, the density of the universe has to be 1 part in 10 quintillion. And I like this illustration because the ladies are making a cake, and you get a little sloppy with the salt, you can get away with it, right? But what they're saying is, like, you've got to count out 10 quintillion grains of salt. If you get 10 quintillion and 1, if you miss 1, you got a disaster. If you put a tablespoon in instead of a teaspoon of salt, you got a disaster. And what they're saying, if you miss it by 1, and there's hundreds of parameters. We think about, the rotation of the Earth. What if it was faster? You'd never get warm. What if it was took 48 hours? You'd cook to death, you see. So the rotation, the reflectivity of the Earth, the amount they call the albedo of the Earth, that is very critical. The magnetic field is designed to protect us, the temperature, the water cycle, it's so necessary for life.
So what you're saying is that there are 100 of these life-giving parameters that if they're altered even by just
a little bit,
a fraction of a percentage, even less than that,
yeah,
that it would be impossible for life to exist in our world. That's really fascinating because when you do look out into our solar system, everywhere else in our solar system is hostile to life.
Yeah.
Yet we have this planet that apparently all the parameters are perfect for life to exist, to thrive. Now, when scientists who aren't from a faith-based perspective look at all these incredible, and we're talking obviously very incredible parameters, and see this planet able to survive and thrive in the midst of a hostile environment, what is their perspective of the Goldilocks planet?
Well, Scientific America says it's dumb luck. We just got lucky. Yeah, it just everything about it. I mean, you could go on and do program to program on the science. Just the freezing of water and how it covers the lakes, and it's lighter than. They're just people who've gone into that. I haven't gone into that a lot, but they're just endless illustrations that this is perfectly adapted for us,
So when it comes to this planet that God has created, it comes to this world that God has made, what was God's intention behind this planet?
It's a long story. There was war in heaven. Okay, we had rebellion, and God had a coup on his hands. What's God going to do? You see, we have this big meeting, and everybody's together, and God says, did you miss him? I just zapped him. You all know we got rebellion here. I just got away. Anybody else have questions around here? You see, God could not destroy Satan. He was rebellious, and he took a third of the angels with him. And God, so I think this little planet is a courtroom. God is on trial here on this planet. And we see the hell Satan causes, all the hell he can cause. God gets blamed, usually. Starving children, where's God? Where's God? Why this happened? Bad things happen. And God shows us all his goodness, his beauty, his love, all the things that he has done for us. And so in a courtroom, we have Satan. We see the effects of Satan. The universe looks on and can see what are the results of rebellion of Satan, and the goodness of God. And God is not going to solve every problem to make Satan look good. He's not. If in a courtroom, if he fixes every problem, solves every cancer, that's tampering with the evidence in a courtroom. We're in a courtroom. I believe God's on trial, Satan's on trial. God's not going to tamper with the evidence just to make Satan look good. But when we look, at the planets out there, and you know, Jesus created it all. And we're told that he traveled from star to star, from world to world, that he supplied the need of every order of being. He created it all. He supplies it all. And I like to play this video clip of galaxies flying by on the screen, and I'll freeze a galaxy there. See, one galaxy, 100 billion stars. If you were going to visit that, you know, and you spend 6 days on each star system, you're looking at about 14 billion years. So when these galaxies are flying by, I think in heaven we're going to get to travel there. And the angels, and this whole clip is taken through a straw, like we did last time we were here. You know, we're looking at the tiniest little speck of the sky, and galaxies are just flying by. If you were going to photograph the whole sky with a straw, it would take 27 million pictures. The angels know that God's got all that. The angels know that there's 27 million times more than what you're seeing. And the angels say, you got all this? And you're going to go down there and you're going to die for that miserable, suffering little world, that disgusting little sinful planet. But so great was the Father's love that he permitted his Son to come down here and die.
So, you know, you have lots of these star maps, and you've shown some pictures, and you can see many things that most people don't get to see because of your connections with other astronomers, telescopes, etc. And then I like how you always point out, and this little speck is planet Earth. Right? Compared to all that God has created. No picture's big enough to capture all that God has created. But you know, when you're looking at all of these pictures, and then you see this speck called Earth, what is that teaching you personally about the gospel?
You know, this universe is so big, there just seems to be no end to it. And, you know, I had in my drive in my garage, a telescope was so big it was on a trailer, a four-wheel trailer. The mirror is 40 inches across. And I'd look at the star cluster in Hercules star cluster, millions of stars in there, and just fill the screen. And why did he make it so big? I mean, there's no end to his power, it seems like. It just blows you away. And when you think of the power of that sun, and every star is doing the same thing. It seems like a waste. We're 93 million miles away. We just get a little sliver from the sun. And that thing is cranking out. It seems like a waste of all that energy that just came from the power of God. And we just have no idea the power of God. And the power to work in your life. There's power in the Word. There's power in the Bible. There's power, you know, God has given us power. We can call on that power when we're battling with sin, you know, when we're battling with...
So you see, when you look out into the universe, you've recognized the amount of power, the immensity of God's ability to sustain the entire universe and keep it going. And that gives you hope and encouragement that this God who upholds the universe can uphold my world, can take care of my life.
Yes, and we see him do miracles, you know. You see God answer prayer and do miracles. And so you know he's there because you see the evidence. And then you look at the prophecies of Daniel 2, and you see that that's history written thousands of years ago, and it's in the news today. You know, the Europe will never be united, the toys of iron and clay. And look at here, England, Brexit wants out. France wants out of the EU. They're trying to unite Europe. And that was all predicted 2,500 years ago. So when you look at the prophecies, I mean, there's no way. That's the only way.
Jim, what would you say to the person that is struggling with their faith, that is struggling with trying to understand God's purpose for their life in the midst of a whole universe? And they may feel like an insignificant nothing. What would you tell that person?
You know, everybody is a special creation of God. Your audience would Emil. There's nobody in the world like Emil, right? Anil. You know.
Thank God.
Well, I had an employee that left and went to California to get a job, but he wrote a nice letter when he left, and he says, you know, I'll always speak highly of you. He said, this world is incomplete without you. So this guy telling his boss, the world is incomplete, and I'm thinking, what a creator. And I thought, what a God. Because that tells me if I'm not in heaven, something's missing. There is this earth would be incomplete without you, Neil. If you're not in heaven, heaven's incomplete. You see, every one of you is a special creation. There's more information in your eye than there is in your fingerprint. You see, you have your own personality, your own DNA, your own RNA, your own voice print. There are not two stars in the universe alike. Every star has its own, we'd say, fingerprint, and spectral lines. We look at the elements present. We run through a spectrometer, and we see every star has its own spectral lines, its own fingerprint, so to speak. Like every person has a special creation of God. If you're not in heaven, something's missing. There's no replacement for every one of you, a special creation of God.
That's beautiful. You know, in the faith traditions I grew up with, we believed in a God who held up the entire universe, but there was none of this personal connection that God had with individual creations. There was none of this personal God stuff that we read about in the Bible. You know, how do we resolve that tension when we're thinking about, especially you who sees the entire universe and seeing many of the stars and getting these images coming back to you? How do we reconcile with the God who is so big, but a God who is also personal and comes close to you? The God who created the stars and planets and solar systems and galaxies is also the God that understands the human heart.
And the God that answers your prayers. And the God that knows the hairs on your head and the sparrow that falls. You see, he's there. He's everywhere. And you know, when you see prayers answered, and I think sometimes God, those who weak and new in the faith, I think sometimes they get their prayers answered before I do, because they need encouragement. I think God is so often gives encouragement to the weak and the frail and wondering. You know, I've heard story after story where people, well, God, if you're there, show me, right? We got people in this audience that I think told me that.
And you believe there's a God who's willing to answer those prayers?
Absolutely. Absolutely. See, God's on trial here, you know, and He's shown us His goodness and His love and His mercy, you know, and because He's had rebellion in the universe, and I had the same thing. I had a third of my employees at one time left. I had a troublemaker. I was traveling a lot, and I'd be gone.
Was his name Lucifer too?
No. And but I got vindicated, and I had one guy come back. He says, "I'm begging for my job. It's a jungle out there." He says, "I took you for granted. I took this, place for granted." And I said, "Yeah, but the frustrations you were frustrated are probably still here." He said, "No, I know. I saw what happened when this troublemaker went somewhere else. He made trouble." So I was vindicated in the end, and I had people begging for their job back, even though they had left. And you see. I don't know, God is all powerful, and He shows Himself if you ask Him.
Mm-hmm. Jim, thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate how you reframe the perspective of this God who upholds the universe, but is also a God who is willing to answer prayers. That's beautiful. We've been talking with Jim Burr about the origins of our world. When we come back, we'll invite our studio audience to ask their own questions, so don't go away. Welcome back. I've been talking with Jim Burr about the origin of our planet, but now we'll turn to our studio audience to hear their thoughts. Who has their first question?
Why do we see lights from stars and galaxies billions of light years away if the universe is only a few thousand years old?
The Bible says God's throne is forever, from eternity past, and so the universe is not 6,000 years old is what I would suggest. The earth, the biosphere was created recent times, around 6,000 years. Biosphere was created on Earth. But the Earth, I believe the foundation was here before, because the Bible says 11 times He created the heavens, He laid the foundations. He created the heavens, He laid the foundations. 11 times it said He did that, and He's in the heavens from eternity past, His throne. Even Hebrews 1 verse 8, it says to the Son, Your throne, O God. It identifies Jesus as God. Your throne, O God, is from everlasting to everlasting. So the heavens have been here for a long time. I think the foundations of the earth were here. Why aren't the foundations? You look at Genesis 1. It never mentions the foundations of the earth. They're mentioned all over the Bible. The foundations of heaven. God is forever. The foundations are forever. And that explains, there's the answer right there for radioisotope dating of the zircons and the rocks and the so forth that were here and was without form and void and darkness upon the face of the deep. So in Genesis, it never mentions the foundations. It assumes they were already laid. I have written a book on that subject. So no, we don't have a problem with starlight time, and yet everybody, it seems like, is going like, well, this universe is 6,000 years old. How did the light get here? And books, I mean, they got 10 different ways of getting light here. You know, we got Dr. Russell Humphreys, we got Dr. Jason Lisle. They don't agree. 2 PhD Christian astrophysicists can't agree on how starlight got. Humphrey says it was like black holes, white holes, event horizons. Jason Lisle says, well, we don't know if the round trip speed of light is the same as a one-way speed of light. I mean, they can't agree, but the Bible's got the answer, and that is the fact that the heavens were from eternity to eternity. God has been here forever, the heavens have been here forever, but the earth biosphere was created about 6,000 years ago.
I like how you're making this distinction, which is really important for everyone to understand too, which is this idea is we don't know the age of the universe, and we don't need to. We just know it's been here for a very, very long time. But as far as life beginning, as the Bible talks about, 6,000 years, around 6,000 years, that's when life began. But this planet itself, in Genesis 1, it starts off as if this planet has already been present before God starts the creation work here. And that, I think that's really great, because I think this really is just aligns up with what we can see in science as well, very clearly in Scripture.
We could do another show on this, okay?
Right.
Okay. Well, listen to this. Here's the problem. These people a lot of them won't keep the fourth commandment, but they use the fourth commandment. For in 6 days the Lord made all that was in the heavens, all that was in the earth, all that was in the sea. Why is the sea mentioned? Okay, if I said the Lord created the earth and he created Africa, okay, but look at this. The interpretation is Genesis 1 verse 8, but the firmament God called heaven. I'm talking about not 100 billion galaxies, I'm talking about the earth, the firmament. And it's mentioned in the first chapter 9 times, firmament of earth, firmament of earth, firmament of earth, firmament of earth, 9 times in the first chapter it mentions the firmament of earth. That's the atmosphere in the air. Now plug that into the fourth commandment. For in 6 days the Lord made the firmament, the earth, and the sea. And everything fits.
So what you're saying then is with the creation of this world that began in Genesis 1, when it's talking about God creating the heavens and earth, it's not talking about the universe, but the heavens is really a reference to heavens and earth to the atmosphere along with the terrain.
Right.
Okay, that's a great way you elaborated that. Any other questions? Right over there.
How do you interpret scientific discoveries that seem to conflict with your faith?
People might wonder, what's a supernova? Exploding star. Where's God? The star explodes. There's some scriptures I think give us some answers to that. And what a supernova is a star that seems to burn up its fuel and get bigger and bigger. A simple explanation, like a balloon, it pops. And it goes out. Like July 4th, 1054, we had one in the constellation of Taurus. It became the Crab Nebula. That gas is going out like 100,000 miles an hour, 200,000 miles an hour, expanding. We photographed that every 15 years, played it back on a computer, the Crab Nebula, and verified when it happened July 4th, 1054, when the Chinese saw it. A star nobody noticed the night before, and all of a sudden, you could see it in the daytime. Okay, so that would be a supernova. We have some of those. It doesn't happen often. We haven't seen it in the Milky Way galaxy since the invention of the telescope. But we look at other galaxies, we see these stars that seem to be, Betelgeuse in Orion is one right now. It's a shoulder star in Orion. It's been fluctuating and changing brightness, and they say it could blow. And maybe it's blowing, but it'd take us, I think it's 600 light years away, I think, before we know it, or maybe it's 1,600, I forget. So what about that? Well, if you look at Psalm 102, it says, of old he laid the foundations of the earth, and the heavens are the works of his hands. They will perish. Psalm 102 says the heavens are going to perish. Okay, all of them shall wax old like a garment, as a vesture shalt thou change them. Well, that's King James. This is a vesture, like I took out my outer jacket. That's kind of what's happening in some of these stars. At Carini every 5.2 years, we get the Cat's Eye Nebula, every 1,500 years it blasts off. And we can look at Romans 8:22. The whole creation is groaning, waiting for the adoption. You see, we don't know how far the curse, sin, it was curse. How far does the curse go? We sing the song at Christmas time, far as the curse is found. We don't know how far that curse. It could be part of the curse. It could be the fact that the heavens are going to perish. And I don't see a problem with that in God.
Jim, I know a lot of people are asking this question too, which is life on other worlds. We know from the Bible there's obviously life here. We know that there's also God and the angels. But when you look out into the universe, life on other worlds, does the discovery of potential life on other worlds, would that challenge our belief? Or do you think it's ever going to happen on this side of heaven?
I think the Bible has the answers. Look at in Mark 13, it says, the very end of time, Jesus sends his elect together, sends his angels to gather his elect from the uttermost part of earth to the uttermost part of heaven. Matthew 24, again, at the very end of time, he sends his angels to gather his elect from heaven, you see, and from utter part of earth. Look at Revelation 12:12, rejoice ye heavens. Who's the ye in heavens? Woe to the earth is Satan's been cast down. It tells the heaven to rejoice. The Bible says we're a spectacle to the universe, to men and to angels. Look at Nehemiah 9:6. He made the heavens with all their hosts, and the hosts of heaven worship him. Who's that? Look at Isaiah 45:18. He made the earth. He did not create it in vain. He created the earth to be inhabited. Did he create those planets? We know thousands of them out there where they created in vain. So when we put this all together, look at Job 1 and the sons of God come together. So yes, we need to be clear. There's only one place there's sin. Nahum 1:9, I think it is. Sin shall not arise the second time. And the problem, most Christians say, no, there's no life out there because then Jesus would have had to die for all these worlds. But the Bible says, iniquity shall not rise the second time. This is the first time, the only time. So I believe there's angels. We're a spectacle, the universe to men and to angels. I think angels can see what's going on this planet.
So Jim, what you're saying is God has created countless worlds out there, but this is the only planet that has fallen.
Yes.
So that begs the question then, are these other people visiting our world? Are these other beings visiting the world,
well,
this world?
There's evil beings. There's good angels and evil angels in a next dimension, in another dimension, okay? Ephesians 3:17 talks about 4 dimensions. Length, the breadth, the height, and the fourth dimension is the love of God, it says. But I think there's a fourth dimension that we can't see because over and over again in the Bible, their eyes were opened. Adam and Eve's eyes were opened. Balaam, his eyes were opened. He saw the angel. The disciples' eyes were opened again and again. I think they're looking into the fourth dimension, and I think we have evil angels in the fourth dimension that are coming down, and UFOs and aliens to deceive the world.
Well, that's fascinating. About 10 years ago, with you saying that word dimension, beings from another dimension, that would have been, weird stuff to hear. But that is actually now becoming terminology that military and congressional folks are using regarding these things that are flying around in our airspace. Yeah. They're now implying some of them are coming potentially from other dimensions. And it's interesting that their language has changed from being beings from other worlds to now beings from other dimensions. There's actually been a switch amongst military personnel and amongst Congress who is having these hearings. And so this is really lining up with what you're saying, and it's really fascinating. I know we could talk more about this, but we have any other questions? Right over there.
Science cannot explain what we cannot observe. Both God and the Big Bang Theory suffer the same issue. What came before them? The answer given for God is that he has always existed. By the scientific method, this is a non-answer. Why believe in something that explains the unknown through magic? Would your faith not interfere with your ability to utilize the scientific method appropriately?
We're a three-dimensional people, and everything we know had a beginning and had an end. I think Maimonides claims that God was in 11 dimensions. And I think in a different dimension, that is why we can't explain the beginning of God, because he was in a dimension that didn't require this. We require, everything has a beginning and an end, and in that dimension, it's an unanswerable question. But when we see the evidence of God, You know, and we see miracles, answered prayer, and things like this. We, by faith, accept the fact that there is a God, and we can't explain where He came from, and we can't explain the power. I mean, the power is just unbelievable power.
What you had mentioned earlier too, just the idea that if we're looking at fundamentally the origins of this universe, it's either absolutely nothing was responsible for the creation of this universe, or there was someone who was responsible for the creation of this universe.
Yeah.
And both of these sources require something to be eternal, immaterial, spaceless, and have infinite power.
Yeah.
And the nothing option doesn't really fit the bill at all. So even just this idea of what we call God, or who we call God, fits all the parameters that Scripture points out. He's eternal, right?
Yeah.
He's unlimited. He's infinite in what He does and His power and His glory.
Yeah.
And I think just your presentation on this universe is indication of all that. So,
Praise Him.
any other questions? Right over there.
Why would God create a universe with so many chaotic factors like supernovas and black holes if His intention was to create life on Earth?
I don't know. That's a hard question, I guess, to answer. You got any ideas on that?
I think reframing the question too is, when we do look in our world today, you know, we talked about these life-giving parameters. Why do we see some of the things that we see in our planet? If this world is intelligently designed, how do we reconcile a intelligently designed world, as you described, with those life-giving parameters? Yet we see a world that has this this brokenness to it. How a perfect God and yet a broken world?
Well, I think that you know, it's a sign that He's coming soon, and a sign of the end, and it calls people out. You know, one of the things I use in witnessing a lot is that I ask people, you know, what do you think about the war in Ukraine or the Middle East, or what do you think about inflation? And right away, people are giving you their opinion. And what I tell them is, you've seen nothing yet. This is going to get so much worse. But look at Daniel 12, verse 1. It says, the good news is that those whose name are written in the Lamb's Book of Life will be delivered. So in order to get people's attention, I think we see all the trouble. I mean, the inflation, the problems, the disease, the pandemics, all the stuff, that's the war, the nuclear threat, the asteroid. Asteroids are in the news every week. You know, we may get destroyed with an asteroid as they interview people on the street. How's the world going to end? You know, and so I think God uses this to get people's attention, that they're going to get a lot worse. And a lady that cut my hair over the years, and I always witnessed to her, and she watched some of the videos, but you know, and I gave her a video the last time before I moved out of town. I gave her a video. I said, put this in your dresser drawer. When things get really bad, get this out and watch this video, because it's going to get so bad that only the people whose names are written in the Lamb Book of Life will be delivered. So I don't have all the answers, but that's what I come up with.
Let's do one more question.
You have mentioned that God answers prayer, and that He is interested in our lives. So I have a question for you. Can we consider God a personal friend and father? And can we have an intimate relationship with Him?
We absolutely can. I think He wants, and He loves to have us come to Him as a friend and pour your heart out to Him. He loves to hear that, and He loves to answer prayers, I believe. And we see His abundant blessings. Are we thanking Him for the blessings? When you think of the suffering world that are hungry, and people who are afraid at night, the violence that goes on and stuff, and here we live in safety and peace and quiet and comfort, and we have our stomachs full, and we have pillows, and we have a warm shower, and God has just given us all these blessings. And we need to thank Him for that and praise Him for His goodness and His blessings, every day.
That's right. Jim, I like this understanding of God that you have, who holds up the universe, but it's intimately connected to every one of His creatures, even in the midst of a broken, rebellious world that we live in. As we've explored tonight, the idea that our world is just a tiny, insignificant dot in the vastness of space doesn't quite hold up against the evidence. We've seen that Earth is a uniquely designed home, perfectly tailored to sustain the intricate web of life. This isn't just a cosmic coincidence. It's a powerful reminder that there's purpose and intention behind our existence. As you head into the rest of your week, I invite you to reflect on the delicate balance that makes life possible on this planet. What if the same attention to detail and care is also woven into the fabric of your own life? I invite you to open your heart to the idea that your life, like our planet, is not here by accident, but by design, and that there is a creator with a purpose and a calling meant specifically for you. Because knowing that will undoubtedly give you hope at night.